It's Jess here from your Health Promotion Borden team. I'm here with Laura Lee this afternoon, and it could be actually your morning by the time you actually watch this, to talk a little bit about injury prevention. We're going to talk a little bit about things that have come up during COVID in terms of injuries and physical activity. And then we're going to gear it towards one of my favorite topics to talk to Laura Lee about is running and different running strategies to keep us safe, to make sure that we can have a long, healthy running career. So Laura Lee, I'm going to turn it over to you. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Jess. Always fun. You and I talk running just for fun. Name is Laura. I'm originally from Newfoundland, but I landed myself in Fredericton, New Brunswick, working for Base Gagetown in 2003 and never left. I've always had a keen interest in injuries, but I wasn't always a runner myself. And through meeting a very overzealous runner in the physiotherapy department, I became a runner myself. And I've had pretty much every injury that you can have from being an overzealous runner. And I've made it my mission to help people not get injured so that they can run long and healthy lives. So that's me.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I asked you to come on and talk to me about the subject, because I do know you have a lot of experience, and also I tend to come to you with questions when I have some injuries or something a little funky going on with running, and I found the advice you give is definitely advice that I heed well and I do listen to, so I really appreciate your knowledge, and I'm excited to share that with people that are going to watch or listen to this. One thing I would like to ask you right off the hop is, have you seen an influx of different kind of injuries with activity because of COVID and people maybe being more sedentary?
Yeah, so as physiotherapists, we were a little bit concerned about the shutdown that sent everybody home, because we knew one of two things were going to happen. People were either going to go home and do nothing, or they were going to go home and they were going to overdo it. So, and that's exactly what we saw. So we had a shutdown for approximately about 3 months, where we were sent home in March and back in July. And when we returned in July, we started to see some of those common injuries of overuse and overdoing it. So when people had more time on their hands, they started being influenced by things that they saw on social media, things like David Goggins, this amazing, fit, super athlete who's very much mind over matter. And I can't tell you how many patients I had quote me that I want to run an ultra marathon now. And sure enough, they started training for ultra marathons, and they had some of the very common injuries of Achilles tendonitis, runner's knee, like iliotibial band or patellofemoral syndrome, hip impingements, plantar fasciitis, all of them. But then the other influx we saw was units said, you've had 3 months, you've been off, now it's time to get going. And they'd go on that first 5K, 8K run, and they'd get all the same kind of injuries just from not loading their body appropriately. You can't go from nothing to loading for 5 or 8K or 10K or whatever it may have been, and not expect your body to have troubles adapting to that. So those were the two scenarios we saw for injuries.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it's something we teach a lot. We find that even though people might be fit enough cardiovascular wise to tackle that 5K or that 10K, and they could always do it before, now because maybe they've spent the winter inside or because of COVID, they weren't as active, we see people trying to get out, and some of those injuries tend to come to the surface because they forget that they haven't used those muscles in that way for a long period of time. So that's what
absolutely
we're concerned with, for sure.
Yeah, no, you hit it on the head. Like, someone might be on their stationary bike because that's all they had when they were home, and their cardiovascular, they feel good. Their VO2 max is good. Their watch is telling them that they're fit. So they feel like they can do bull of 1 kilometer speed repeats in 3:30s, but the tissue hasn't been adapted for that kind of stress. And they're going to get the typical shin splints or, heaven forbid, stress fractures.
Yeah. And that's something we want to try to avoid for sure, especially coming into the nicer weather. I say that it's like -5 here today, and that's nice weather for us.
Yeah.
So nice, but yeah, coming into the nicer weather where people can get out a little bit more, especially those who haven't had access to a facility. We want to really be careful with that and remind them to progress into their workouts. And for those people that are listening and you're interested in programming to make sure that you don't get injured, I encourage you to reach out to your PSP fitness team and work on some of those progressions. But what I would like to know from you is, at what point do I need to pay attention to one of those small little weird feelings that might be creeping in? And
you should always listen to your body.
I know.
Yeah, you should always listen to your body and all weird. Yeah, like if there's something that's off, you should give it a little bit of respect. What I often tell people is that if you've been noticing some Achilles pain or some heel pain that's new to you and you haven't had it before, that's your body telling you something and you should be attentive to it. I recommend that people take a few days off, no running, and then they go back and revisit it at half their mileage and an easy pace, and see if it was fine, if it adapted to or responded to that. But if it's not, it will still be there. And it means that you should probably consult with your doctor, your physiotherapist, and have a closer look at it. But your body, that's one of the most common things we see, people not listening to their body and listening to those cues, especially in a military environment where they have to get through some courses or some training. They don't want to get recoursed. They tend to ignore little pains. And as a result, by ignoring those little pains, they end up turning into big injuries that end up setting them back a lot further. So you need to respect it. Most times your body is telling you something that if you continue to ignore it, it will win. Make sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And I know it's hard to find that line, right? Like, it's a beautiful day. My Achilles is bothering me a little bit. I want to go exercise. I think it would be good for me to get out, but yet I'm feeling a little tinge of pain. Like, when do you push through it and when do you pull back? And I think you're right. Like,
yeah,
you have a pain, your body's telling you something, but it's that fine line of that motivational drive and being smart.
Yeah. And it's, again, it's nobody knows your body better than you. So you know when there's something a little bit different going on, as opposed to, you're feeling some achiness in both hamstrings or both quads. Well, guess what? That's probably just fatigue. That's your body saying, wow, I'm tired. But it's the ones that are specific. They're in a weird spot or they're a one-off that, yeah, something doesn't quite feel right. It's probably because something isn't quite right.
Yeah.
And another mistake that people make is they say, okay, well, I have this pain. I'm going to do nothing until this pain goes away. That's also the wrong answer. You can absolutely exercise and keep your level of fitness around an injury without hurting that injury. So, for instance, let's say you are recovering from a stress fracture and the impact bothers it, but low impact is no big deal. So if you can get on that elliptical trainer and continue to move that blood flow through your body and keep yourself exercising around that injury, your body's going to heal up faster and you're going to be more prepared to do a gradual return to running.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So natural transition, let's talk a little bit more about running. So you said yourself you're a runner. How often are you running right now?
Right now, I'm probably doing about 60 kilometers a week.
Okay. And that's, I would guess, would be more on the high end for people that are just more recreational runners. So all of that said, please don't run out and do 60 kilometers.
But that's because I run all the time, though. You know that.
Right. Yeah, I do know that.
I've been running 12 to 15 years, and my mileage has been consistent between, like, depending on if I'm training or not, 40 and 80K a week. All depends if there's a race. I find a lot of people find themselves now lacking motivation to keep going because there are no races to train for. There's no goals. So, like, for me, I just keep it consistent. But one of the rules of thumb I have with mileage and not getting hurt is that what I typically do is consistently once every 4 to 6 weeks, I take a drop in my mileage. Because if you're running 60, 70 kilometers a week after week after week, a lot of times your body's going to get drained because there's life stressors, there's commitments, there's just, your work, your family, life happens. And then if you're continuously stressing yourself and driving yourself to put in the same training hours, something's going to break. So giving yourself a little bit of a break, again, dropping about 20 to 40% of your mileage once in a training cycle, like every 4 to 6 weeks, is a very healthy thing for you to do. You won't lose that fitness by doing that. Rest is it's one of the most overlooked gifts that you can give your body.
I think that's a really good point too. Those taper weeks are absolutely key in any program, and they actually will allow you to come back to that program stronger and more refreshed to get better results. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because oftentimes, especially with new runners, they tend to think more is better when actually those taper weeks are key in any program. Those high-low impact days too. Could you speak to high-low impact training a bit?
Yeah, so high impact, when I think of high impact, I think of it's when you're doing those really driven days where you're doing speed work, you're doing hard hills, you're doing things that are a higher intensity, and you're just constantly loading your body, load. Well, your body needs time to adapt to that stress. So if you're continuously giving it high impact and load all the time, something's going to break. But when you balance it out by doing some low impact activity, you still maintain the cardiovascular benefits, but you're giving the body a breather from that impact, and you're decreasing your likelihood of developing something like a stress fracture or overuse injury, tendinopathy. You need a little bit of both for balance. For me, I consider treadmill running a lower impact activity, because on the treadmill, I really take it back a notch. I keep my heart rate way down, like between 135 and a 142, as opposed to when I train outside, my heart rate's going a lot higher because I'm going a lot harder and being a lot more impactful. So I usually train higher at 155 to 165, depending on the kind of work I'm doing that day. So that lower intensity, high volume is so healthy for you when it comes to running. They say, people have probably heard this before, the 80-20% rule. Well, there's truth to that. So it's like speed work. If you do 2 days of speed work a week, and that could be like hill repeats, or it could be intervals, or it could be a tempo run. And then you do your other, let's say you have 3 other training days of the week, you should do those really easy, really, really easy. And that's one of the problems people have, at least in my experience with keen runners. And most runners I've met are super keen, super excited, and they just want to go hard all the time. And I thought that's how they get hurt. I used to do that.
Yeah, I used to be on that list of people too. And I think I have had opportunities to learn through every injury I had. I learned about running shoes through Achilles tendonitis. I learned about speed work and hill training through posterior tibialis tendonitis. It seems like I've made some pretty hard mistakes that I'd like to help other people with. Yeah, with some of those. So I think what you just mentioned is really important. For sure, with the high training. Can you talk to me a little bit about running shoes and how much of a difference they make? And how to select a good running shoe?
So running shoes are one of those topics where there's all kinds of different things that you'll read out there when you Google running shoes, because the running shoe industry is about making money. So a lot of times when there's a sales pitch of buy this kind of shoe, and this is the kind of shoe for your foot, the research on it, the only real good research that I've seen on it is that your injury risk is reduced when you rotate through, I think it's 3 pairs of shoes. So for instance, if you have one pair of shoes that you wear when you run distance and another pair of shoes that you wear when you run speed work, and maybe another pair of shoes that you run on the trails. So when you alternate between a few pairs of shoes during any training cycle, that's had the best evidence for reducing injury rates. And that's what I've seen in the literature. There's lots of hype about low profile shoes, or you need arch support or you don't, but the evidence on it is fair at best. What I find, what I recommend to people is that you should really find the shoe that works for you, that you feel is comfortable, and that you try out, and that's going to be the shoe for you. They do say, though, I was reading another article, it was talk about having a specific racing shoe, and this racing shoe being a special racing shoe has been linked to having better performances in races.
Okay.
Yeah, so I will never say you need an anti-pronator or a motion control or a neutral cushioned, because again, the evidence, when we talk about things, we speak about evidence-based things. It's just not there.
Right. So I know a lot of what we advocate for in our courses is just a general neutral shoe. And that there isn't really one shoe that's better than other. What would you have to say about when to change your shoes, or how?
Funny, I get asked that all the time, because what you'll read is, every 500 to 800 kilometers, you should rotate your shoes. I might be a little bit old school, but I'm a firm believer in that your body better than anybody else, and your body will tell you. Like when you put on a pair of shoes, you go for a run, they just don't feel right anymore, they're done. And I know that's a wishy-washy answer, but that's the truth. I've had shoes that haven't lasted me very long at all, and I've had shoes that have lasted me longer. When I run, I typically wear a little bit more cushion when I run distance. Right. When I run shorter distances and sprints, I use something that doesn't have a lot of cushion so I can feel more, so I can turn my feet over faster. And as a result, those are the shoes that you're going to wear down a little faster. The ones with more cushion, they're going to last you a little bit longer. So right. I know it's a bit of, a loaded answer there, because it is a bit wishy-washy. There is no specific answer.
No, it is wishy-washy, but at the same time, like I understand what you're saying. I think I was saying just this week, I need new shoes, and I can tell because my Achilles are bothering me again, and it's time.
Yeah, right? Exactly. You just know it. Like it just feels different. You put on a pair of shoes and you go for that run. It's just like, no. And then as soon as you put on a new pair, it's just like night and day. It's such a good feeling when you put on a new pair of shoes that are ready to go.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. A lot of talk in the running community talks about 180 steps per minute.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Love it. I believe in it thoroughly. People that have a slow cadence, which is a lot of times 140, 150 steps per minute, when they turn their feet over that slowly, it means that they spend more time with their feet in contact with the ground, and it's a higher impact. So there's more stress going through your bones and joints. When you turn your feet over faster, there's less impact, there's less time in contact with the ground. So you're going to absorb the shock better, and you're going to have less stress because you're turning your feet over faster. The other thing about turning your feet over faster is decreases the length of that stride. So you're less likely to bound with a heavy heel strike, and you're more likely to place your foot underneath your center of gravity and put all your energy into the posterior chain of lifting your heel up towards your bum, and then letting gravity allow the foot to drop in your center of gravity. Those people that have those slow cadences, I can picture it right now. They overstride, meaning their foot lands way out in front of them, and they land on a heel. A heel strike is so much higher of a load as opposed to a mid-foot strike. When your foot lands mid-foot, your body's like an elastic band, elastic recoil, and it absorbs the shock nicely. But when you land out on an outstretched heel, the knee is often locked, the foot is dorsiflexed, and it takes a lot of impact and a lot of load. And it's like an electric shock that goes from the ankle to the knee, to the hip, to the back, everywhere, because it's all connected. And it might not hurt the first little while that you run like that, but over time, accumulation, one day it's going to be like, ow, I'm hurt and I don't know why.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thoroughly believe in 180.
Interestingly enough, working with the forces, oftentimes we hear them say, make sure you stride long, like lengthen your stride. And
yeah,
we've seen a shift in that culture over the last couple of years based off of exactly what you just explained.
Yeah. And that's what you're right. In the military, they're constantly told to stretch it out and step it out. And when it comes to running, it doesn't work that way. Like when you talk with the stride length, it's actually going from your center of mass behind you. The stride length comes from having your hip flexors opened up and being able to extend your leg behind you, not from using those hip flexors to drive that leg forward. That's not the way it is, but that's what's been taught.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit more here.
Okay.
Can you give me like your top 3 tips for a new runner that wants to maybe run their first 5K?
Oh, okay. Let me think about that. Number 1, that's exciting. I love hearing about that. Top 3 tips.
You love hearing about it because you know it probably won't be their last 5K.
No, because they'll get addicted.
10K.
They'll get hooked. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before, and there's so many tips, so I'm going to think about that for a second. I guess one would be to take it very easy, very gradually, very slowly. So what I mean by that is I was just reading an article recently that I think it was a high number of first-time marathoners get injured at about the 12-week mark of a 16-week training program, because that's when the mileage really increases. So that maybe there's more evidence to support trying to space that out a little bit longer. So rather than trying, let's say a person's like, I want to run that 5K, and right now let's say it's March, I want to run it in May. Well, for someone that's never run 5K before, that might be a little bit too soon. So I say the more time preparing, the better. So number 1 is just to get yourself more fit. So you can do that by cross training. You can do that by starting on a walk run program, so that you're gradually increasing those loads for running. So if I had someone coming to me that never ran a day in their life and wanted to run 5K, I'd probably start them with walk run intervals before I ever thought about just saying go run. So that would probably be my first piece of advice, which would be take it slow and gradual and get yourself on a walk run program.
Okay.
Let me see, what would be another one that I'd want to tell them?
I know for me, I find consistency is key. We see a lot of people when they want to make that lifestyle change, they go really hard for 2 weeks, and then it's somehow that motivation just falls off. I tend to push people more to, find what you can reasonably do and be consistent with it. So instead of, 5 to 7 days a week, if you can give 3 days, with running itself can give you a very solid base and a good starting point. Right.
And Jess, you for saying that, because that made me think that's another thing that I tell people is that it's about consistency. I recommend when you're doing walk run programs or running programs that the minimum that you should be doing it is 4 times a week. Like to really, and I mean, truthfully, 3 to 4 is good, but if I tell them 4, I might get 3 out of them. So it is about consistency, because a lot of times if let's say they pick 2 run days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, it's not enough to sustain improvement and gains. Right. So consistency is key. Another one just came to me too. And this is, I wish I could told my younger self this. Runners need to strength train. You can't just run. The old philosophy that I had, and I think many older runners had, was you'll get your strength training from running hills. Not true. You really need to strength train, because if your body is going to take that load, it needs that muscle behind it to help prevent things like tendon breakdown that we see in Achilles tendonitis and patellar tendonitis and iliotibial band syndrome. So again, any good running program would be consistent, it would be gradual, and it would have an element of strength to it. Strength training on top of it as well.
I think that's really, I'm glad you mentioned that, because with runners, especially when they are motivated, and I've gone through these like ebbs and flows in my kind of running journey as well. Like sometimes I don't want to strength train. I just want to run. And I forget how important that piece of it is. Things like planks and lunges and squats and those types of exercises will make you a stronger runner and decrease your risk of injury. So
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
My next question.
What I tell people that say oh, okay.
Oh no, keep going. Keep going. This is important. I'll save it. I'm going to hit you with it.
No, okay. One little piece to it, that if you say you don't have time to strength train because your running takes all your time, it's as simple as cutting your run 10 minutes short to do 10 minutes of strength training, because that's sometimes all you need to do. That's it.
You're right. And it's really, I don't want to minimize people's schedules, but finding 10 minutes in the day can be difficult. Or if you're creative with it, it might not be too hard. It might mean instead of watching TV, sitting on the couch, you get up and you're doing some of that stuff while you're watching TV. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to, change into workout clothes, find a half an hour, follow a video. It can be very simple.
Exactly. No, you're right. And that speaks to going back to being consistent. It doesn't have to be a hard, structured workout every time. It's just a matter of moving your body and getting it done.
Yeah. No, very good points. Now let's say I am that avid runner who loves, that distance of 10Ks to half marathons, but I haven't been doing a lot this winter. Maybe I haven't had access to the gym. Maybe I'm just not that motivated, but I'm getting more motivated. Are there any different tips you would give that group of people?
So I guess the thing that's different from the people that have never run is that the person that just took a bit of a break over the winter needs to realize you're not in the shape that you were 6 months ago when you were running. You need to build yourself back up to get there again. You'll get there quicker because your body has memory of that. It's been there before. But the biggest advice is you need to be slow and gradual and work your way back to race ready, which usually is somewhere between a 10 and 12 week or even a 12 to 16 week program of taking it gradually and slowly and building that mileage back up again. So you might only start off at 25 kilometers a week and build back up from there, going at that 10% rule of 10% extra every week. And that's the way they get it done. So that's the big difference. I find sometimes people that, let's say they ran 3 marathons in the last 2 years prior to doing nothing for 6 months. They're not marathon ready. They really need to be gradual and progressive.
Yep.
So don't be too overconfident, I guess is what I'm saying, because that's a recipe for getting injured too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'm definitely guilty of that one at times. And I think for me, it's very important to acknowledge the fact that, especially if I am just getting going again, it's not the time to come out of the gate with hill training and speed work and like,
exactly.
It's like that time to just get out there and not really worry about your pace and put the time on the legs.
Yeah, just get those base miles done before you even think about adding the speed work and the hill work and all that.
And I think that's important to remember.
Yeah, and that's why
I know if I were to grab like a program offline or a book or something, typically your hill training and speed work is built in automatically, but you really should have a base, in my opinion, and please correct me, before you get into those type training.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, all this stuff that we're talking about is out there, and the information, you'll see it time and time again. And that'll give you confidence in the things that we're talking about, that you hear us say it. You'll pick up a magazine, you'll hear it there. You pick up a book, you'll hear it there. Again, this stuff is tried and true because it's the truth.
Fair enough. Would you have any recommendations for resources for anyone listening that wants to learn more about running or just injury prevention in general?
Oh, actually, I do. I love Blais Dubois. He's a physiotherapist that has his own company, the Running Clinic, and it's just therunningclinic.ca. And he is geared towards prevention of running injuries. And he's somebody that I follow and I keep up on the research. He has links on his website about return to run programs and common injuries that runners have. He has tools for new runners, like really good website, really good resource. Another person that's really good on social media is Tom Gloom. Or Goom, sorry. He has a lot of good information on running and running injuries. Because again, one of the best people to listen to when you have an injury is someone that, running injury that is someone that runs themselves because they're passionate, invested. They just want to see more people like them getting out there running.
Yeah, and I have to say, I personally have found a difference in healthcare providers that I've gone to that were runners versus non-runners, because I tend to be maybe a little more stubborn with how much I want to pull back on my training, and to have someone that can understand it. And not only just understand the injury and what that feels like, but actually that drive and that motivation to want to be active and keep going, I think is really important too.
Yeah. Well, because sometimes, and in the past, you'd hear, well, if it hurts, don't do it. If it hurts to run, don't run. But again, that's not our world. We've got people that are passionate about it. And then in the military, you've got people that they have no choice. It's part of their job. They have to run. So we need to make it fun.
Yes, we do. And I think we're seeing a bit more of a shift over the last couple of years with that. It's less of, I really dislike running because you made me do it for years, and more of that culture of, yeah, I want to get out there at lunchtime and go, is there a race on base, or is there anything to get my family? So it's nice that coming back again.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I think there's a resurgence in running a bit too with all the virtual races that are out there, because walking and running during COVID has been one thing that almost everyone can do, right? It's easily accessible. So
and our bodies need exercise. It needs the mobility to feel good. It's one of those integral pieces. Like, we need to sleep, we need to nourish well, we need to exercise. And I've heard it time and time again, if exercise could be put in a pill form, we'd cure all the diseases of the world.
Yep. And I think it's definitely something kind of our head of injury prevention preaches a lot, is that exercise is itself medicine. So
it is.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I don't want to take any more of your time, and I really appreciate you carving out some time in your day for us. And I'm always happy to talk to you about running, and I'm sure I'll reach out again at some point. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
I don't know. I thought about some things that you might ask me. I'm just curious if there's anything there that I think we hit most of it. Yeah, one thing we didn't talk about was the only other thing that I'd mention is I usually speak to people with running. It's good to have stiff springs. A lot of times when people come to see me about injuries, they have this idea that they just need to stretch it out. They just need to massage it. They just need to stretch it. If they could stretch it more, it'd be all better. But it goes back to our point about strengthening. We need to load the body. We need to have the muscles strong and have that tensile force so they can absorb the shock. And that it's really the strengthening that's really important. Not that there's anything wrong with doing mobility training, but mobility training without strengthening, it's going to defeat itself. So just don't think every time you have an injury, it's something that can be stretched out or rubbed out. You really need to balance it out with loading. Very important for running. Paula Radcliffe, actually, I was listening to a podcast one morning, and they spoke to when she got the world record for the women's marathon, her finger to toe reach was the worst it had ever been. So she'd actually tightened up more in her hamstrings. And that was the same year that she won the marathon, hit the record. So that was pretty interesting.
I think there has been a bit of research out there to talk about flexibility isn't always a huge benefit with some sports as well, right? So,
And there was also the research that came out years and years ago about stretching doesn't prevent injury, because it
right.
used to be a cool thought that we thought, oh, you just need to stretch before you work out and it's going to decrease your injury likelihood. And that's been disproven in the literature. What they say now is that if you're someone that's always stretched, continue to do so. But if you're looking for a proper warm up, it just needs to be a gradual warm up in your body. So
Yeah.
Jess, you and I were going out for a run. That would mean that we wouldn't start out with a 4:10 sprint. We'd start off nice and easy.
We never,
We do tend to bring that out in each other.
no.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we can actually get back out there together and run at some point. Hopefully
so.
it won't be. Yeah.
One more thing I'll leave you guys with is if you haven't connected on FaceTime for a treadmill run with a friend, you're missing out.
That's a really good tip. Can you tell us more about that?
Just that part of running too, it's not for everybody, I guess. When I speak to this, I'm speaking to people like me, in that a big part of your running is your social and gathering with like-minded people. And nothing brings me more joy than sharing a run with a friend. And again, during those COVID lockdown months that were really hard, and I know you guys are still up in Ontario, still going through, just getting on my treadmill and seeing a friendly face and being able to chat about whatever was bothering you while you run makes that run effortless. And it really takes your mind off of any discomfort or fatigue, and really just, again, gives you more of those positive endorphins running through your body. Because not only are you exercising, you're connecting with a friend, you're venting, you're doing all those positive things as well. So I can't speak enough to what a great escape that's been for me.
That's a great tip. And hopefully our listeners will heed that advice if they have the availability to do that. Yeah, so thank you for your time. If we do have some questions, I will send more of them your way. And other than that, I'm going to let you get back to whatever it was you were doing today.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Jess. Happy to do it. And anytime.
All right. See you later.